Whether fat loss is your number one goal for the year or it's part of your top 5 health goals, stay tuned because we've got a great episode for you on a lot of tips on how you can make that happen. Hi, I'm Dr. Angela Yegley, and today I'm with my amazing marketing director,
Barry Napier.
Yeah,
thanks for being here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Always a pleasure. So today I'm super excited to talk with Barry because, this would be probably one of the top ones that I end up seeing, or a top concern from people as they're coming in. People will see us definitely for other chronic issues or fatigue, but always on the list, there's typically like a weight concern or say difficulty with actually losing and targeting fat.
Just about everybody, right? Just about everybody. Somewhere on your list is, I'd like to lose some weight. And typically when we're talking about losing weight, we're talking about we'd like to get rid of some body fat.
Yes.
And oftentimes we even have some targeted areas, right? So it's like, I want to lose some fat. I have some fat over here on my sides or on my arms or my leg, wherever it is, or just maybe everywhere, and you just want to get rid of some of that damn fat.
Yes.
Get rid of it.
Yeah.
But it's harder. It's sometimes much harder, or we've been on these kind of roller coaster cyclic experiences in our life where we've lost weight and we gain it back, we lose weight, we gain it back, and oftentimes when we find ourselves, especially as we get a little older, it can be much harder to even replicate that cycle of weight loss.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Aging, I feel like, impacts people. So usually where I begin when people come and see me, starting out, our number one is really getting we have to have a baseline of, is your thyroid functioning correctly? How are your adrenal glands doing? Because they support, they make cortisol, which most people are actually deficient, which is actually a strain on the body. Or say for men, like, are you low testosterone? That's huge because you have a harder time building and maintaining muscle mass. And then for women too, actually, really for women, it's the balance of, having your good estrogen, progesterone, but also having at least some testosterone, right? Not zero, which I've seen women with zero, just crazy. So really your first step would be, you need to make sure that all of those are dialed in, right? That your thyroid does look good, your adrenals are good, your vitamins are good. I'm a big fan of B vitamins, as we'll talk about, because they are really involved in just pushing your metabolism. And then we're on to the next step, right?
So I think I would summarize it to say testing. Probably
Absolutely.
Do a baseline testing, understand what's going on with some of your baseline systems. Then we can move into some of these other, what we could call lifestyle alterations, right? Or behavioral changes you can make. And of course, it's going to come down to diet, and food is the biggest lever that we can pull when it comes to our body composition. Our ratio of lean skeletal muscle mass to body fat. Now, of course, we need body fat to live. So if we had zero body fat, we would die, right?
We would die,
and most of us don't actually want to be completely shredded and look like a physique competitor or be on the cover of a magazine. That's not necessarily where we want to live our everyday life, right? Oftentimes we want to look good during certain events or seasons, and then we want to have a general feeling of confidence and well-being and comfort in our body.
Absolutely.
And that can look very different for all of us, right? Yeah. But generally speaking, we have to look at diet first, going after whatever that weight is. It could be, again, health-driven, or it could be aesthetic-driven. I want to look a certain way because I'll feel better when I look that way. And I think both those things are valid.
And I do too. And many times they're combined. And, there's the impact on mental health, because when you're feeling better physically in your body, a lot of times it's, you just have a better outlook. And there's good research to support that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're going to get into diet, this is a very complicated scenario. We've talked about this in some other videos. We'll put some more videos in the future. I'm always just cut to the chase on this, is that you're probably going to need somebody to help you figure it out. Yeah. That's what I've found.
Coaching, invaluable.
Absolutely, in this particular arena, because there's so many options and things you can do that can actually work. And so it's figuring out what's going to work for you, what might work short term but not long term, what's going to fit into your overall life, how you live. So very complex, but just some basic things that we should cover is caloric intake. So overeating, so that's a common thing, right? It's like, do you want to lose weight? It's like, eat less, move more.
Absolutely. And I probably men fall for, are in that category too, but I'd say definitely women. I have women that come in that are, a woman who's 60, and she's like, I eat literally at 800 to 1,000 calories a day, and say she's 240 pounds. She's like, I cannot get this weight to budge. Like, it's going nowhere. And you kind of go, how is that even possible? Well, I mean, her body up to this point has gone, well, we're starving, so we're going to have to cut back, and the energy level just drops down.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is the body is incredible, right?
Is,
and
yeah.
so it kind of will balance itself to over time to wherever you are. And most people, especially women, have chronically underate for so long that they're really so far below where they could be eating and should be eating that there's really nowhere to go to cut.
Yeah, there's no cutting.
There's no cutting. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
So we try to create an energy deficit, but we're already so low on the spectrum that there's really nowhere lower to go.
Yes. And I'll just share quickly, like, I love intermittent fasting. We'll talk about that in diet style, but I realized over time, I was doing it so long. After a while, I lost my appetite. Like, I could just not eat and it was fine. And that's not okay. Like, I got to a point, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get stronger, build muscle, do things by eating very little, right? Even though it was comfortable, it was like, but I started losing weight. I'm like, this is not a good scenario. So I think you have to be cautious. Just sharing that, now I'm back off intermittent fasting and working on adjusting things in a different way, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the flip side, if you're in a really low calorie state and you just start eating a bunch more food, you're going to gain weight. You're most likely going to gain fat.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it feels like now I'm stuck in this hell of low calorie. And this is again where a coach can come. There's a technique called reverse dieting where you incrementally and gradually add food back in a very targeted and specific way over time and rebuild your metabolic capacity to handle food.
Which I think, I really wanted Barry to talk about today, because I find this so fascinating because it's exactly the opposite of what you always hear, right? Like, you always hear, if you want to have better metabolism, eat more. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense at all.
It is.
And so I love your story of working with a coach on actually eating more calories and having your weight really
remain
balance
relatively
out.
stable.
Yeah.
I mean, it remained relatively stable. There was some weight gain because I was going after some strength goals as well. So I was pushing that food consumption really intensely. But yeah, I've worked with it, worked with a coach in a coaching process where that's their whole thing, is to essentially rebuild your metabolic capacity through slowly adding up and increasing your food.
Yeah.
And then cycling that with fat loss, like periods of time, very short, like 6 weeks, where for a 6-week period, then you'll do an aggressive cut and you'll see a good movement in terms of body fat percentage changing, and I've personally seen, like, when I do those smaller cuts, losing somewhere between 7 and 12 pounds, and then bringing the food back up, doing another little mini cut to kind of cut some more weight, and then finding kind of that space where you then move into a maintenance mode, where you then rebuild your food back up to a place where you feel comfortable and weight stable. So that's completely possible. I didn't think it was, until I experienced it. I mean, it sounds like, when I say it like that, it makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense.
But
when you
real.
say I'm going to eat more to way less, that doesn't make any sense.
For many people, that's what they need to do. They actually need to kind of build their calories back up and then do a cut and then build it back up and then cut and that now puts the body in a place where it's willing and able to start shedding weight. And just as an example, like, I weigh 209 pounds right now is the time of this recording, and my wife weighs 100, let's say 40 pounds. And right now, she's on the same plan. She's eating more food than I am in a day.
That's crazy.
So think about that.
Yeah.
70-pound difference. I'm active too. It's not like she's like a ultra marathoner. We have about the same level of activity, give or take. And so yet, she's built her food up. Yeah. She's eating more than me.
That's crazy.
Every day right now.
Yeah, that's insane.
By a significant amount.
Wow.
Because I just came off a fat loss cycle, so I'm in like a gradual thing,
okay.
and she's in a little bit more of an aggressive build.
Okay.
But it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So figuring this out, absolute key. And part of what you also have to figure out is the macro quality and content of your food, rather. So quality of food does matter, but macro, what it's composed of, it's protein, it's carbs, it's fat, that matters more than actual food quality. So, some people don't love to hear that, but food quality is important. Organic, high nutrient, all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. But when we're talking about fat metabolism, we have to understand food composition from a macro standpoint. Because your body handles these different things differently. And so most people have low protein and they're high carb and high fat. And that is ultimately the recipe to then gain unwanted weight over time. That's how you gain 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds over time.
And I feel like, in this, like, say, what I find fascinating about that is that, I think most people, and I would have put myself in this category, like, even though I'm a holistic physician, this is not how we were trained. We're trained on overall wellness of the body, but this is really, I think most people don't know these things.
No, most people don't. No, no doctors trained on this.
Right.
So it's like, this isn't something that's a failing of our medical community, MDs, NDs, NEDs. It's just that nobody's trained on this.
It's really, it's fascinating to me as I'm learning more about this slowly that, and encouraging patients to pursue these types of things that, I mean, I think as we talked about, some of this is reflected in the different diet styles.
Exactly.
Right? So they don't call it this. They don't say, now we're about to go high protein,
low carb.
Low carb. They're going to say, we're doing keto, right?
They're going to say, hey, listen, carbs are the problem.
Right.
You know what, your body does way better when it, runs on these things called ketones, and what we're doing is put your body in a state of ketosis. And so keto, basically any diet, Zone, Weight Watchers, literally any diet that you can think of, in some way is manipulating these macros. So by eliminating them or restricting them or changing their ratios, and it's manipulating your caloric intake. And it's doing so to achieve a result, right? And so once you know that, it's like, oh, okay. You can sometimes just say, well, rather than go down this diet style that's very restrictive, maybe for a little bit, I'm going to just understand the composition of the food I'm eating, how much I'm eating, because I'm going to weigh, measure, and track it. And then I'm going to work with somebody to help me set targets there that can move me towards my goal. That sounds like a lot of work. It's because it is.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to lie. Right. I'm not going to tell you that.
Because you're talking about, like, you're weighing your food. You're actually being very conscientious and you're tracking it. Yeah, it is.
Do you need to live that way your whole life? Yeah. Maybe not. Yeah. I found that it's, for me personally, after doing everything, every single diet ever done, that I just accepted it. It's the most sustainable for me. And I'm in a relationship where that also happens. So it's doubly reinforced. And, my friends do it, so it's socially acceptable. But even if you're not going to weigh and measure your food forever, if that sounds daunting, ridiculous, or just absolutely no, that's fine. But for a period of time, like a 3-month period where you might be working with a coach, highly, highly recommend it. Because every single person I've ever seen who's done it, it's like their mind's blowing. They're like,
and I would agree with that. The people, like, say, their doctor here has gone through this process, and she shared that, Dr. Morella, and again, naturopathic physician, we do not learn this in school. And same thing, just like, oh my God, I know just the relationship and the understanding of food, very different, because you're watching, as you're measuring and looking at things, you're watching your body change, right? So you're going, oh, I get it, right? I can see now when I increase the protein and
It's a direct correlation, right?
Exactly, which is pretty cool.
It is cool. So this is something to figure out, and we spent a lot of time on it, but it's because this is the number one most important thing. Now, secondary, like on the third on the list, so here's baseline, diet, then number 3 I would say is what you're going to do from a strength and from an exercise cardiovascular standpoint. So this is the other big thing. Oftentimes people reverse these, they think I need to work out more, lose weight, and it turns out like working out to lose weight isn't the fastest way to get there. Really, it's like I need to be eating towards that goal, and then I'm going to pick exercise that complements that particular goal.
And I'm really glad that you've said that, because one thing I'm noticing, I've started more recently, would you call it like a CrossFit style training, right? Or functional fitness, more weights, things like that. And one thing I find really fascinating, of course, definitely at the gym, there's some very fit people, right? Absolutely. But I also see very strong people who are very overweight. And that's really fascinating, because you go, my gosh, I'm watching the weight and it's incredible, but they probably have 50 pounds or more. Like, you can see it's everywhere, Well, so you're right. Being strong does not necessarily equal.
No. And sometimes it works against it. For some strength athletes, that extra body weight is desirable. They want it. So it's not like some of us don't want to be extra fat. Other people are like, give me that fat, and whatever. So this is all very individualized. Yeah. But when it comes to your strength, well, I did a lot of coaching, a lot of work in the CrossFit space in years past, and one of the biggest things people would say to me is, I want to look like, I want to look as good as the hard work I put into the gym. Like I'm working my ass off. I'm sweaty. I'm killing myself, and I don't feel like my body represents that. I want to look athletic,
I think that's I guess if you're working that hard,
yes,
right?
You want to see some benefit, and every single time it's not this, right? So, but